Chapter 28:14. I'm not interested in the Meow tribe's matter. The man's hoarse voice was melodious and filled with magnetism, seducing her tightly. You're so restless and trying to seduce me. Are you so impatient that you want me to sleep with you? His fingers were slightly calloused, and the touch on her face was extremely gentle. Yi Qingluo's face revealed a trace of satisfaction, like a cat's expression. The breath she breathed out was scorching hot and tempting. Her pink lips parted slightly as she laughed softly. Just a few touches and the overlord reacted? Is the overlord craving for me too much, or is it too easy to react? Perhaps it was the man's fingertips that caressed her so comfortably. When the young lady spoke, there was a trace of satisfaction in her murmur. The ending sound rose up, extremely devilish, like a seductive little hook. Bit by bit, it hooked a certain part of her heart. Mo Xian's pupils suddenly contracted. Suddenly, a hand that was gently caressing her face pinched her chin. The man bent down and got closer to her. But he didn't kiss her. Just that the close distance was filled with danger. His hoarse voice warned, Yi Qingluo, don't try to provoke me. Mo Xian's 5 fingers were a little strong. So strong that her chin felt a little painful. Yi Qingluo frowned as she endured the pain on her chin and forcefully pulled out an evil smile. Her charming eyes curved. Overlord, are you angry because I've hit the mark? Mo Xian's eyes were still flickering as he stared at Yi Qingluo's face without blinking. After some time, he loosened his 5 fingers. He also shifted his line of sight away. He just sat on the soft cushion, his long legs half bent as his deep and gloomy eyes stared ahead. As though he didn't want to say another word to Yi Qingluo. Such an attitude made Yi Qingluo's mood improve greatly. He didn't deny it. That proved that she had indeed hit the mark on his thoughts. Under the condition of being poisoned by the centrifugal worm, he could still have such a strong reaction towards her. It was enough to prove how important she was in Mo Xian's heart. Even if it was the centrifugal worm, it would absolutely not be able to separate their hearts. No matter what the Meow tribesman thought, the saintess had personally spoken. He personally confirmed that Miao Yi's answer was completely correct. The last candidate to become the holy maiden was Miao Yi. Tomorrow he would go to the ancient Gu King's land to carry out the Gu King's recognition ceremony. Soon after, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, today's selection ceremony was officially over. The crowd dispersed one after another. Miao Yi walked off the stage without looking back. The judging elder immediately caught up to her. Miss Miao, wait. The other elders also followed closely behind. Miao Yi was surrounded by a few elders. Perhaps it was because her mood had been affected, but there was not a hint of a smile on her face. Miss Miao, tomorrow is the recognition ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms. When will you? The 4th elder stammered, as if he was choosing his words carefully. The other elders also looked at Miao Yi with hopeful expressions. They all knew. Back then, Miao Yi had taken the ancient Gu King and escaped from the Miao tribe. Now Miao Yi had returned to the Miao tribe. She had never explained anything about the ancient Gu King from the beginning to the end. The ancient Gu King was the lifeline of the Miao tribe. What did Miao Yi do when she brought the ancient Gu King away? Was the ancient Gu King still with Miao Yi? Chapter 28:15. A calm and dignified voice rang out. The white-robed elder who had been standing beside Miaoji stroked his white beard and walked out. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding elders quietened down. All of them stood up straight. His brows were filled with respect. The white-robed elder smiled kindly and said, "The recognition ceremony of the ancient Gu King will be held tomorrow. Send the ancient Gu King back to the place of the King of Venomous Worms, and we'll talk about it after the ceremony. What do you think?" His tone was also very gentle. He did not force Miao Yi to hand over the ancient Gu King. Miao Yi looked up at the white-robed elder and chuckled. "Are you afraid that I won't return the ancient Gu King to the Miao tribe?" The white-robed elder, who was the great elder of the Miao tribe, smiled like a Methriya Buddha and said, "Yi, what are you talking about? You are the future leader of the Miao tribe and the only candidate for the saintess. Everything in the Miao tribe will be yours, including the ancient Gu King. If that's the case, you don't have to ask any more questions." Miao Yi did not give face to the great elder and rejected him directly. The ancient Gu King is with me. I will invite him out tomorrow. After saying that, he pushed aside the elders surrounding him and walked down the selection stage. The few elders were stunned on the spot. The fourth elder looked displeased and said, "Isn't Miss Miao too arrogant? She seems to be hostile towards us." The fifth elder frowned and said worriedly, "If Miss Miao refuses to accept us, it will not be good for the future of the Miao tribe." The other elders looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence. "Give her some time, and she will believe in your loyalty to the Miao tribe." Miao Ji sighed as she watched Miao Yi leave. She stood up and a hint of melancholy appeared on her gentle face. "Rest assured, Lady Holy Maiden, we will definitely assist young Miss Miao." Seeing the Holy Maiden speak, the elders immediately raised their hands and placed them on their shoulders in salute. Miao Ji smiled and said, "Yi is too stubborn. When I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will have to ask you to take good care of Yi." Miao Ji's words were also indirectly telling the elders. Miao Yi indeed had a close relationship with her, and she indeed supported Miao Yi. The few elders hurriedly lowered their heads and responded in unison. Miao Ji thanked him and walked down the stage. Great Elder Miao immediately followed closely behind. Miao Ji stopped in her tracks and raised her hand to stop Great Elder Miao from following her. She said calmly, "This saintess still has matters to attend to." Great Elder Miao froze for a moment before stopping in his tracks. Miao Ji continued walking forward. The direction she was heading towards was not the way back. Instead, in the seats, the first row on the right. Miao Ji walked at a steady pace. He had barely taken a few steps when he was surrounded by a few people dressed in luxurious clothes. Standing at the very front was the pitiful Miao Jilian, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. The people behind him were Miao Jilian's parents and elders. "Saintess, please." Miao Jilian's sobbing voice sounded aggrieved. However, Miao Jilian did not have time to finish her words. Miao Ji glanced at her indifferently. Her gaze was very indifferent. It was just a glance, but Miao Jilian's tears welled up in her eyes and could not fall. "This saintess hates people who don't keep their promises. Since you agreed to the bet, then bear the consequences yourself." Chapter 28:16. Miao Jilian's face was ashen as she laid limply on the ground. She covered her face as tears gushed out. She heard her mother's grumbling voice. "I told you, Sacred Maiden, and that slut's relationship is not ordinary, so what's the use of begging, Sacred Maiden? Our family's face has been thrown away by you. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. What's the use of raising you up and nurturing you so painstakingly? You don't have any foresight at all." Her father berated her furiously. Miao Jilian felt her ears buzzing as her eyes turned black. Under this endless criticism and grumbling, she fainted. At the same time, Yi Qingluo frowned slightly as she looked at Miao Yi, who was walking towards the Sacred Maiden's candidate room. She could tell that Miao Yi was feeling down. She stood up and chased after her. An arm stretched out. It directly pulled her into his embrace. The man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. History was always shockingly similar. Yi Qingluo had learnt her lesson this time as she conserved her energy and didn't struggle. "I'm only going over to take a look at her. When her emotions have stabilized, I'll be back." The man didn't give any response after she finished her words. The hand which was on her waist didn't move at all. Yi Qingluo was helpless as she followed his hand and found a comfortable position in his arms. Then, "Overlord, will you go with me?" Dmo Xian still didn't reply. His long arm tightened around her waist. He lowered his head and planted his lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely sexy. "Have you forgotten something?" "Forgotten what?" Yi Qingluo blinked her eyes blankly. Above her head floated the man's low husky laughter. But this laughter, Yi Qingluo inexplicably sensed something. A dangerous aura. Yi Qingluo's petite body trembled as she instinctively sensed danger and wanted to push the man away. But at the next moment, the man directly opened his mouth and bit her earlobe. Yi Qingluo moaned as her little hand gripped the man's robe tightly. What are you doing?" Yi Qingluo's face was instantly dyed red. She really wanted to break free from the man's restraint. This restraint seemed to have a bad taste as it tempted her, especially when the man bit her earlobe. She was unable to control the numbness that she felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her mind went blank for a moment. He felt as if all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. His heart was thumping, beating faster and faster. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. Before the ceremony, someone seemed to have promised this lord something. Dmo Xian grabbed the back of her head, preventing her from evading. His teeth were still biting on Yi Qingluo's earlobe. As he spoke, his warm breath constantly drilled into her ears. Yi Qingluo's petite body kept trembling. Her whole body was limp, and her eyes were wet with tears. She was about to go crazy from the torture. Her head was spinning. What did I promise you? Do whatever I want with you, including sleeping with you. Dmo Xian's voice was low, and he sounded very happy. The young lady's innocent and honest response made Dmo Xian's mood improve greatly. His big palm clasped Yi Qingluo's waist tightly as he let go of her ear and laughed. This lord has already done what I promised you. Next, it's time to collect the repayment. Yi Qingluo struggled a little. This we can talk about it later. This lord has no patience. Dmo Xian rejected decisively. Chapter 28:17. No. Dmo Xian still rejected. Yi Qingluo. Damn it. Could they still have a pleasant conversation? After a moment of confrontation, Yi Qingluo was defeated. Then what do you want? Go back to the room, deal with you. Dmo Xian replied very decisively. Clearly, these words sounded very normal. But when it came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, it inexplicably carried a kind of seductive, colorful meaning. Yi Qingluo clenched her teeth, stretched out her hand and pinched the man's tight waist. I lose to you. I'll go with you and let you deal with me, all right? Saying that, she twisted her little body and turned her head to the side in a muffled voice, expressing that she was extremely angry now. While she was angry, Yi Qingluo didn't forget to let Chi-Chi out. Then she gave Chi-Chi the instruction to accompany Miao Yi. Chi-Chi was such a small ball and looked adorable. It should make Miao Yi feel better. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, looking at Chi-Chi's lightning-fast figure. His voice was deep. I can't tell that this lord's woman is not a simple person. Yi Qingluo gloomily shook her head and snorted. It's good that you know so. Overlord, what you need to do is to hug my thigh and listen to me obediently. The young lady's voice was sullen and sundra, which made Dmo Xian's gaze became gentler. He laughed hoarsely, his rosy lips were even more gorgeous. This suggestion is not bad, but let this lord try first, to see if this thigh of yours is good enough. While speaking, he had already grabbed the young lady's waist and carried her in his arms. There were too many people watching the show. He loved to tease the young lady in his arms. And he didn't have the bad taste of letting others watch the show. Especially, he didn't want anyone to see the shy young lady. Dmo Xian carried Yi Qingluo and stood up. An anxious voice was heard from behind. Overlord, please hold on. It was accompanied by urgent footsteps. Dmo Xian pretended not to hear it as he walked forward. Yi Qingluo could tell that it was Miaoji's voice. Thinking of Miao Yi, she tugged Dmo Xian's collar. It's sacred maiden, put me down. Dmo Xian pursed his lips, apparently displeased. However, he still stopped in his tracks. Miaoji happened to catch up with them. She took a look at the young lady in Dmo Xian's arms and hung her head down awkwardly. Miss Yi, I have something to tell you, do you have the time? Yes. No. Two voices spoke at the same time. Yi Qingluo glared at him furiously. Dmo Xian, stop fooling around. If the holy maiden is looking for me, she must have something important to do. Don't tell me this lord's matter is not important. Dmo Xian sneered. Miaoji felt even more embarrassed. Looking at the way the overlord was hugging Yi Qingluo, he was looking at the atmosphere between the two of them. Miaoji more or less understood that she had disturbed the overlord's good time. However, she didn't have any extra time to wait for the next chance to talk to Yi Qingluo. He thought of the way Miao Yi looked at him. Miaoji took a deep breath and spoke again. Miss Yi, I'll only take up a little bit of your time. If The overlord is worried, you can come along too. Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady's eyes were sharp and her soft little hand directly covered Dmo Xian's mouth. The young lady's other hand encircled the man's neck as she leaned close to the man's ear. Chapter 28:18. Hearing the young lady's serious tone, Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly, especially after hearing the young lady's serious words. Unknowingly, a smile appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo leaned close to his ear and couldn't see his expression. But Miaoji could see it clearly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The overlord was like a madman, pampering a young lady named Yiqing Luo and pampering her dearly. From the looks of it now, it was indeed true. Everyone could see that. The relationship between the two of them was really good, without any fake feelings. When Yiqing Luo moved her little head away, she raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian solemnly. The man had already adjusted the emotions in his eyes. He looked noble and indifferent, like an ascetic young master. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips as he raised his slender fingers and flicked fiercely on Yiqing Luo's forehead. His voice was deep as he said slowly, "All right." Yiqing Luo. Such a straightforward reply. Why did it make her feel as though she had fallen into a wolf's pit? She felt that Dmo Xian had been rejecting her suggestions in various ways, just to tempt her to say this sentence? No matter what. After hearing Dmo Xian finally nodding his head in agreement, Miaoji couldn't wait any longer as she invited the both of them to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. Sacred Maiden's status in the Miao tribe was extremely high. Because of that, the place where she stayed was the best location in the entire Miao tribe. And she had her own courtyard, far away from the other tribesmen. Outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard was a huge nursery. The things planted in the nursery made Yiqing Luo curious. Those seedlings weren't the usual emerald green, but a kind of almost blood red. It looked extremely horrifying. Miaoji took a look at the nursery as her lips curled. These are the food for the goo worms, used to nurture adult goo worms. The three of them walked past the nursery and entered the courtyard. It was another huge, lush garden like a forest. There was only one small path for people to pass through. On both sides of the small path, there were white hemp ropes which formed into a large net, blocking everything tightly. Through the web-like hemp rope, Yiqing Luo could see that the lush garden was densely packed with thousands of worms, crawling and squirming. Be careful. Don't touch the insect webs on both sides. Miaoji reminded them gently, without any airs of a saintess. I'm sorry for making you come to such a dangerous place. It's just that. I don't want a fourth person to know what I want to tell you. It's all right. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those wriggling various goo worms. It's not bad to come here to broaden my horizons. As Yiqing Luo was speaking, her eyes had been studying the worm web, on how it prevented those goo worms from crawling out. He did not pay attention to his feet for a moment. He stepped on a branch that had spread out from the worm web. Yiqing Luo staggered as she fell forward. No matter how fast her reaction was, unfortunately this small path was too narrow. She didn't have anything to hold on to, and she was even more worried that she would pull down the surrounding insect webs. He thought that he would fall to the ground. However, in the next instant, Yiqing Luo felt a tightness around her waist. Immediately, the scent of a man's sandalwood scent wafted over. She crashed into Dmo Xian's chest. The two of them stabilized their footsteps. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as she raised her head, and was just about to express her thanks. Chapter 28:19. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as she speedily withdrew from Dmo Xian's embrace. "Ah Xian, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Dmo Xian did not answer. He leaned against the insect web behind him, his body stiff and motionless. "Are you guys okay?" Miaoji quickly turned around and walked over. When she saw Dmo Xian's back leaning against the insect web, she stretched out her hand, wanting to support him. These insect webs are made from medicinal herbs which are the nemesis of goo worms. They are very sturdy and won't be damaged by collisions. It doesn't matter even if someone touches these insect webs, as it won't cause any harm to the body. But Miaoji's hand had yet to touch Diemo Xian. Diemo Xian had already braced his body and dodged to the side. He dodged. Diemo Xian's tall and sturdy body staggered and swayed. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's quick reflexes to support him, he would probably be unable to stand steadily. Sacred Maiden, this insect web, after touching it, is there really no effect? Yi Qing Luo wrapped her arms around Diemo Xian's tall body, pulling him away from the insect web. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were covered in frost. Miaoji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, "I can confirm that I made these insect webs with my own hands. There's no mistake." After a pause, Miaoji looked at the overlord, whose huge body was pressing on top of the young girl. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. Unless the overlord is. Where is the nearest room in the courtyard? Go there now. There seems to be something wrong with Xian's body. Yi Qing Luo interrupted Miaoji's words as she placed all her attention on Diemo Xian. The man on top of her felt as if his body was on fire and extremely hot. His breathing was also very heavy. "Come with me." Miaoji also knew that Diemo Xian wasn't willing to let anyone other than Yi Qing Luo touch him, so she quickly led the way. Yi Qing Luo supported the man, or more accurately, she carried the man. Diemo Xian's consciousness was obviously no longer conscious. His tall body and his strength were almost completely pressed down on her. Yi Qing Luo knew that her strength was definitely not small. Casually grabbing a person's neck and lifting them up was also a very easy thing to do. But when he was carrying Diemo Xian, she only felt. He was almost overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. She carried the man and followed Miaoji for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After passing through the garden filled with insect webs, there was a row of rooms on the right. Miaoji asked Yi Qing Luo to help Diemo Xian to lie on the bed. "Can you remove the overlord's mask?" Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened as she bent down and removed the mask from Diemo Xian's face. That peerless face was reflected in her eyes. However, this usually expressionless face was now filled with emotions. At this moment, his face was as pale as paper. His brows were tightly knitted together as if he was in great pain. Looking at the man's tightly knitted brows, Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. "Little Luo," the man on the bed called out subconsciously. His hoarse voice was filled with immense pain. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned sour when she heard that call. She squatted by the bed and reached out to hold the man's hand, pressing it against her cheek. "Xian, I'm here. Tell me if you're feeling unwell." Yi Qing Luo had yet to finish her words of consolation. Suddenly, her shoulder was pressed down by a palm. Miaoji's solemn voice floated over her head. "Don't move, let me take a look." Chapter 28:20. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she quickly rolled up Diemo Xian's wide sleeves. The moment her gaze touched the man's wrist, Yi Qing Luo's throat tightened as her pupils unconsciously enlarged. She saw. On the man's wrist, there was a red line like a blood thread, extending from his palm to his wrist. On one look, it was as though Diemo Xian's hand had split open with a cut. It was extremely ghastly. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see that the line of blood was still spreading towards his arm, although the speed was very slow. But Yi Qing Luo could determine that this line of blood would spread to his shoulder in less than a joss stick's time. "What is this?" Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at Miaoji. "Indeed. I guessed correctly." Miaoji's eyes sunk when she saw that red line. There are goo worms in Diemo Xian's body and it's an extremely insidious poison, right? It wasn't a big deal for a normal person to touch the worm web, but Diemo Xian had the love and centrifugal worm in his body. At the moment when he touched the worm web, the medicinal effect of the goo worm's nemesis flowed through the skin and into Diemo Xian's body. The love and centrifugal worm would be stimulated by this medicinal effect at the same time. Hearing Miaoji's explanation, Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened. "Then is there any way to alleviate it?" "I'll light a stalk of tranquilizer to temporarily let the goo worms in Diemo Xian's body settle down first." Miaoji took out an incense burner from the side and placed it by the bedside. Yi Qing Luo took a look. That was a square-shaped incense block and the smell was very strange. She took a look at Miaoji. Although she was sure that Miao Ji cared about Miao Yi a lot, and would not have any ill intentions towards her and Dmo Xian. But after all, regarding the art of gu worms, it was something she wasn't good at, so she couldn't fully trust it. Yiqing Luo asked Old Man Song in her consciousness. You lass, you're really reckless. Knowing that Dmo Xian's body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm, you still let him come to this place full of gu worms. After Old Man Song was awakened by Yiqing Luo, he sensed the surrounding atmosphere and couldn't help but mumbled a few words. Old Man Song's consciousness swept towards the direction of the gu worm incense. That is an ordinary incense. It can be used to suppress the gu worms in Dmo Xian's body. He watched as Miao Ji lit the incense and placed it beside the bed. Yiqing Luo was just about to ask about Dmo Xian's situation. Miao Ji's gaze was fixed on her. There's a soul searching for Ngongxiang. It's you? Whose soul do you carry with you? As soon as she said that, she quickly retracted her gaze and realized something. She smiled apologetically and said, Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. She lowered her eyes, and her face was as gentle as water. Chapter 28-21. I know you want to talk to me about Yi. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze from Miao Ji and looked back at the man lying on the bed as her voice was very soft. Your relationship with Yi, if I didn't guess wrongly, even if you're not mother and daughter, but you were once as close as mother and daughter. As Yiqing Luo said that, she stretched out her hand again and held Dmo Xian's scorching hot palm. After the incense was ignited, Dmo Xian's tightly knitted brows eased slightly. Only, the man's temperature was unable to cool down for a long time. She hoped that Dmo Xian could feel that she was by his side, using her willpower to withstand the stimulation of the love and centrifugal worm. Am I very obvious? Miao Ji gave a bitter smile behind her. Yi's attitude towards me is so cold. How can you still tell our relationship? Yiqing Luo didn't look at her as her voice was slightly gloomy. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. I can tell that Yi isn't cold towards you, but she can't accept you appearing as the sacred lady. Miao Ji was stunned as though her thoughts were exposed as she lowered her eyelids. After some time, she sighed softly as a sliver of melancholy and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. Miss Yi, putting aside the sacred lady's identity, can I ask you for a favor as a senior? Yiqing Luo looked at her sideways. Miao Ji's lips moved. Yi trusts you very much, I hope. You can help me to restore the relationship between me and Yi. I don't want to leave Nirvana realm with any regrets. Seeing Miao Yi return to the Miao tribe and shed away the immaturity and naivety from before, she had become able to take charge. Miao Ji's heart was gratified and excited, but also melancholy and helpless. Melancholy, she had never participated in Miao Yi's changes, but she was unable to participate in Miao Yi's changes. Restore the relationship? Yiqing Luo found it funny as she raised her brows. Yi obviously doesn't hold any hope towards you. Since you're about to leave Nirvana realm, why do you need to give her unnecessary hope before you leave and increase her sadness? I know. I let her down in the past, but I'm Yi's only family in this world. I don't want her to feel that she has no one to worry about in this world other than the two of you. Miao Ji's eyes were complicated. Moreover, Yi has become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. 50 years later, she will be able to ascend to the upper realm. I will be waiting for her there. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and didn't reply immediately. Miao Ji's feelings for Miao Yi did not seem fake. Moreover, Miao Ji was right. Except for the dying Miao Yixiong, Miao Ji was Miao Yi's only family. Miao Yi indeed had a deep grudge against Miao Ji. However, if he really didn't care about Miao Ji, why would he pay attention to her attitude? Pay attention to Miao Ji's emotions. Chapter 28-22. Are you sure you can cure Xian? Yiqing Luo followed Miao Ji's words and continued, not only to give Miao Ji a way out. Most importantly, Dmo Xian's poison could be cured as soon as possible. When Miao Yi became the sacred maiden, she would go to the sacred maiden pavilion to find the cure. It would take too long. Moreover, Long Yunjian was still waiting for her to bring Miao Yi back to suppress the poison in his body. If Miao Ji could cure Dmo Xian in advance, time would be much more relaxed. But facing Yi Qing Luo's hopeful gaze, Miao Ji's face revealed an obvious guilty expression. I'm sorry, cure. I can't do it. Yi Qing Luo's heart, which had been lifted up, felt as though it was being strangled by something fiercely as her throat tightened. Can't do it? Miao Ji's sacred maiden said she couldn't cure Xian? Meaning, the poison in Xian's body. Even the sacred maiden couldn't cure it? No, don't misunderstand. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's exquisite face turning pale in an instant as her eyes widened in shock in her lifeless look, Miao Ji immediately opened her mouth to explain. What I mean is not that the Overlord's poison can't be cured, but I can't personally cure the Overlord's poison. This time round, Miao Ji was too embarrassed to interrupt her as she spoke swiftly. I don't know what the poison in the Overlord's body is, nor do I know what method was used to implant it into the Overlord's body. From the Overlord's intense projection of the worm web, to the point that even a powerful Overlord is unable to control the poison, I can conclude that the poison in the Overlord's body is not simple. As she said that, her gaze fell onto Dmo Xian. That revealed half of his arm. The red bloodlines which kept spreading had stopped at his wrist, and didn't spread any further. She sighed softly. Such a complicated poison, the method to cure it is also very complicated. I don't have much time left in Nirvana realm, so I really have no way to cure the Overlord. Then, Yi Qing Luo's throat moved, and after she spat out a word, she felt her throat tightening. After Yi becomes the sacred maiden, I will tell her the method. Miao Ji looked at the young lady whose face was gradually regaining its color. I knew Yi's innate talent since she was born, so if I pass it to her, she will definitely do better than me. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. She looked at the man on the bed quietly, and Zhongxiang had already played its role. The painful expression on the man's face eased up a lot. His tightly furrowed and twisted brows slowly smoothed out. Her fingertips slowly probed towards Dmo Xian's wrist. When it touched that line of blood, the protruding sensation made her slightly startled. This bloodline seemed to have grown out from Dmo Xian's body. It felt very strange to the touch. Goosebumps rose all over her body. However, it was fortunate that he was able to. This line of blood did not seem to have any intention of continuing to spread. Otherwise, she really didn't know what would happen when the bloodline spread to her shoulders, or even her head. Looks like she wanted to persuade Miao Yi to give Miao Ji a chance to resolve the misunderstanding. It was not only because of Miao Yi, but also because she cared about Miao Ji. If he wanted to cure Dmo Xian earlier, Miao Ji had to get along with Miao Yi peacefully. Miao Yi also had to learn the method of curing the goo from Miao Ji seriously. Chapter 28-23. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly. She clenched her fists even tighter. Her fingertips turned white, with blue veins popping out. Between his eyes, there was a thin layer of mist. Yi Qing Luo didn't rush her, quietly letting her immerse herself in her own thoughts and memories of the past. After a long time, Miao Ji closed her eyes and slowly opened her mouth. Mixed with a sigh, it was filled with extreme bitterness. Miao Ji and Miao Yi's relationship was as Yi Qing Luo expected. Not a mother and daughter relationship, but they were indeed like mother and daughter. Miao Ji was Miao Yi's biological mother, Miao Yuan's biological sister, which was also Miao Yi's aunt. But to put it more accurately, Miao Ji should be considered as Miao Yi's master. Most of Miao Yi's witchcraft was taught by Miao Ji. Miao Yi's biological mother wasn't a Miao clansman, but was saved by Miao Yixiong when he was outside, rushing about for the development of the Miao tribe. Miao Yuan and Miao Ji were brought into the Miao tribe by Miao Yixiong. Their names were also given by Miao Yixiong. Their days in the Miao tribe were not easy for the two sisters, because the Miao clansmen were too united. They were not willing to acknowledge them who came from other tribes. Because of this, when Miao Yuan and Miao Yixiong fell in love and became pregnant, none of the Miao clansmen acknowledged Miao Yuan's identity as the clan leader's wife. Of course, Miao Yixiong was only interested in Miao Yuan's beauty, to have a taste and play. The woman whom Miao Yixiong wanted to marry was naturally a woman who could help him stabilize his position as the clan leader. To him, Miao Yuan was just a plaything. These words, Miao Ji persuaded Miao Yuan. But Miao Yuan deeply loved this hero who saved her, and didn't believe her sister's words. With the child in her belly, she looked forward to her hero marrying her. But what Miao Yuan waited for was not Miao Yixiong's sedan chair. But Miao Yixiong's chosen wife, with the same big belly, came to the door with her head held high. She claimed that she was under Miao Yixiong's order to abort the bastard in Miao Yuan's belly. The reason for the abort? It was to let the child in her belly become the legitimate eldest miss of the Miao tribe. How could Miao Yuan be willing to submit? The two sisters accidentally entered the land of the ancient Gu king when they were trying to escape. Coincidentally, the ancient Gu king was molting and accepting a new life. He heard that Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had entered the land of the ancient Gu king. Miao Yixiong and the elders hurried over. Miao Yuan was so nervous that his stomach bumped into King of Venomous Worm's half-molted shell. The sharp shell cut through the skin on Miao Yuan's stomach. A drop of blood entered Gu King's body through the half-molted shell. Great Elder Miao saw this scene unfold before his eyes. The Gu King, who had sucked in the blood from Miao Yuan's stomach, was not agitated at all. Moreover, Miao Yuan was not corroded by the poison of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao immediately decided that the child in Miao Yuan's womb was recognized by the ancient Gu King, and was the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao's face instantly turned pale. Madame Miao was also very powerful in the Miao tribe. However, no one dared to act rashly against a child recognized by the ancient Gu King. In the end, he could only hide Miao Yi's identity after Miao Yuan gave birth to her. Until Madame Miao's child, Miao Rongrong, was born. Miao Yi gradually appeared in the eyes of the Miao tribe. In fact, Miao Yi was born 2 months earlier than Miao Rongrong. However, for Miao Rongrong's legitimate misidentity. Chapter 28-24. However, Miao Yi gave up her identity. She did not get the reward she deserved. No one in the Miao tribe was willing to accept a second miss who was half a foreigner. No one acknowledged Miao Yi's identity. No one gave Miao Yi the respect she deserved as a second Mississippi. In addition, Madame Miao hated the Miao sisters and Miao Yi. Because Miao Yi was the child protected by the Gu King, Madame Miao did not dare to go too far. But in the dark, he had set up many obstacles for the sisters and their children. He had even thought of a vicious plan to kill Miao Yuan and her sister. She could not touch Miao Yi. She could at least touch the sisters, right? As long as the two sisters were killed, a child that had just been born would not live for long. With this thought in mind, Madame Miao's attacks became more and more vicious. Most importantly, after Miao Yixiong knew what Madame Miao had done, he did not stop her at all. This also showed his attitude to the Miao tribesmen even more clearly. Not only Madame Miao's henchmen would come looking for trouble, even the other Miao tribesmen who could not stand the sight of outsiders would humiliate them several times. Fortunately, Miao Ji was smart and knew to attract the elders again and again, blocking several attempts to kill her. After repeated setbacks, Miao Yi almost died in Madame Miao's hands several times. Miao Yuan gradually grew up. Miao Yuan was really silly when it came to love. But as a mother, from a mother's point of view, love and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Just like that, under the protection of the Miao sisters, Miao Yi lived to the age of 5. Miao Ji had a deep understanding of the Miao tribe's reality and their terrible faces in the past few years. They wanted to leave the Miao tribe. But those who entered the Miao tribe, without the permission of the tribe leader and the elders, could not even take a step out. If they did not leave the Miao tribe, they had to establish a foothold in the Miao tribe. They could not make the Miao tribe recognize their bloodline. Then they could only start with the Gu tribe. Back then, they were forced by Madame Miao to hide in the ancient Gu King's land. Miao Ji kept an eye out. When Miao Yuan's belly was cut by the Gu King's shell, she stepped forward to support him, leaving behind a drop of her own blood. From then on, Miao Ji could clearly feel that she was very sensitive to the aura of Gu worms. Even after Madame Miao tried to poison them several times, She could also restrain those goo worms and take them for her own use. At first, Miaoji was not interested in the Miao tribe's goo. After discovering these changes, she was only wary of Madame Miao's henchmen, and had no intention of learning from Miao Gu. However, Madame Miao was overbearing, and Miao Yi, who had escaped death several times. This made Miaoji determined to use voodoo to raise their status. Thus, Miaoji began to secretly learn Miao Gu's voodoo techniques. The Miao tribesmen did not take Miaoji and the other two seriously at all. From time to time, Miaoji would act as a cleaning maid, entering the Miao Stockade village's Gu Book Pavilion to clean up. This also gave Miaoji more opportunities to come into contact with Miao Gu's knowledge. In the next few months, her voodoo skills improved by leaps and bounds. Ever since Miao Yi was born, Miaoji knew that her niece was a direct descendant of the Miao tribe that the king of venomous worms had recognized. Her talent for Miao Gu was definitely above hers. Chapter 28-25. This made Miaoji more and more sure of her guess. So Miaoji taught Miao Yi all the knowledge she knew about the Gu. She also asked Miao Yi to hide her knowledge of the Gu as much as possible. The environment she grew up in made Miao Yi know how to observe people at a young age, and how not to let her mother and aunt worry about her. Naturally, she obediently listened to her aunt's words. Even Miao Yuan did not know that his daughter had begun to learn the Gu of the Miao Gu. Another year passed like this. Miaoji's Gu was no worse than most of the Miao people. Miao Yi was indeed a talented direct descendant of the Miao people. But she learned knowledge from Miaoji for a year. Now her knowledge of the Gu had far surpassed Miao Rongrong, who was carefully cultivated by Miao Yixiong and Mrs. Miao. Miaoji was very pleased about this. At this time, Miao Yi and Miaoji's relationship was undoubtedly the best. They got along every day and discussed the Gu of the Miao Gu. It could be said that even Miao Yuan was a little jealous of their intimacy. All of this, when did it start to change? It was when Miao Yi was almost 7 years old. Miaoji brought Miao Yi to the land of the ancient Gu king, and learned the knowledge of the Gu as usual. But she met the saintess at that time, Miao Jingyi. Miao Jingyi encountered Miao Yi's Gu of the Miao talent. After hearing Miao Yi's identity, she decisively proposed that Miao Yi be her candidate for the next saintess. At this time, Miao Jingyi had reached the qualification to ascend to the upper realm, but she had to stay in the Miao tribe for 50 years. Now there were still a few years, but after seeing Miao Yi, Miao Jingyi had another plan. Miao Jingyi wanted to pass the position of the saintess to Miao Ji, and take charge of the position for 7 years. In the saintess selection ceremony 7 years later, she would pass it to Miao Yi. This plan sounded like a way for Miao Ji and Miao Yi to change their situation. But Miao Jingyi's request was not only this. The reason why Miao Jingyi chose Miao Yi was that Miao Yi was a direct descendant protected by the Gu king. She had been the saintess of the Miao tribe for 40 years, and could not get close to the Gu king. She wanted to see Miao Yi borrow the power of the Gu king. She wanted to see the connection between Miao Yi and the Gu king. Although, since Miao Yi was born, the elders had mentioned that Miao Yi was the direct descendant of King of Venomous Worms. But in fact, they didn't really touch the Gu king. They didn't dare to get close to him. Let Miao Shiyi see the connection between Miao Yi and King of Venomous Worms. What if all his guesses were wrong? Miao Yi had come into contact with the King of Venomous Worms, and was corroded by its poison. What should she do then? Miaoji did not dare to take this risk. Miao Yi was everything to her, and Miao Yuan. She couldn't risk Miao Yi for the sake of her future status. However, Miao Shiyi was eager to ascend. Miaoji did not reply. Thus, he took the initiative to look for Miao Yuan. Only then did Miao Yuan realize that his sister and daughter had actually secretly put in so much effort for this family. After hearing the conditions for Miao Yi to contact the Gu king, Miao Yuan refused without hesitation. Miao Shiyi didn't insist. She just said, "Which expert doesn't walk on the edge of danger? If a talented Miao Gu genius like Yi is buried because of you, are you sure she won't blame you when she grows up?" He wouldn't blame them. Chapter 28-26. That was right. If Miao Yi grew up and found out that he had rejected her chance to become strong, would he blame her? She didn't know. Unable to answer this question, Miao Ji was also unable to make a decision. The 7-year-old Miao Yi, who had been sensitive since she was a child, sensed the atmosphere. Miao Shuyi's visit to Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had aroused Madame Miao's vigilance. Once again he was ruthless. In order to protect Miao Yi, Miao Yuan was seriously injured. Only then did Miao Yi know that Miao Shuyi asked her to prove that she was related to Gu King. She looked at her mother, who was lying on the bed with a pale face but was always thinking about her. Miao Yi chose to agree with Miao Shuyi's proposal. She was still young. But after all, the environment she grew up in made her very clear. In the Miao tribe, if he wanted to stand firm, if he wanted to gain the recognition of the Miao tribe, if he wanted to protect his mother and aunt, if he wanted to avenge his mother, she had to stand at the highest position in the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. She wanted to become the saintess of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao must pay the price. She wanted to make that so-called father and sister regret treating the three of them with such an attitude. She wanted to protect her mother and aunt. While Miao Yuan was not paying attention, Miao Yi went to look for Miao Shuyi. Miao Shuyi had been waiting for Miao Yuan and Miao Ji's answer. However, Miao Yi came alone to reply. He valued Miao Yi more and more. Miao Yi did not disappoint Miao Shuyi. She contacted Gu King in front of Miao Shuyi. Moreover, it did not cause the king of venomous worms to counterattack. When Miao Ji arrived at the land of the Gu King, what he saw was Miao Yi putting her hand on the giant king of venomous worms. The hearts of the people of the Hmong village almost stopped beating. Miao Ji rushed over to stop him. However, Miao Shuyi stopped her. She heard Miao Shuyi muttering to herself. As expected, it's her, the destined holy maiden Miao Gu. Miao Ji did not understand what he meant. She only knew that when she came to her senses, Miao Shuyi had already held Miao Yi's hand and walked in front of her. Miao Shuyi's eyes were filled with smiles. This child is the next Holy Virgin. There are only 4 years left until the Holy Virgin selection. In these 4 years I'll have to trouble you, to help her grow up to the point where she has the qualifications to become the holy daughter. In a daze Miao Ji brought Miao Yi back. Then he was secretly summoned by Miao Shuyi. On the same day, Miao Shuyi gave her saintess position as well as the gu worms that she had nurtured for decades to Miao Ji. He even told Miao Ji, Miao Yi would become the master of Gu King. However, with Miao Yi's current mental strength, she could not control the Gu King for her own use. If he wanted Miao Yi to contract with the king of venomous worms before she became the Holy Virgin, the only way was for Miao Yi to lose all support and grow up alone. That was to say, Miao Ji, who had become the Holy Maiden, could no longer take care of Miao Yi as the Holy Maiden. And Miao Yuan could no longer protect Miao Yi. Everything, let Miao Yi grow on her own. He could increase his mentality and form a contract with the ancient Gu King. Miao Ji hesitated. Miao Yuan, who was seriously injured in bed, made the decision for her. Miao Yuan knew very well that he could not survive this serious injury. Miao Yi had such a chance now. As long as she became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in the future, Miao Yi's future would be peaceful. Chapter 28-27. Miao Yuan knew that becoming the saintess was the greatest guarantee for Miao Yi's future. So she gritted her teeth, with her seriously injured body, and Miao Ji left the small courtyard where she lived with Miao Yi, moved to the place where the saintess lived. In the first few days, Miao Yi thought her mother was taken away by her aunt for treatment. But 7 days passed. She still did not hear any news about her mother and aunt. Miao Yi also felt something was wrong. She was only 7 years old, and she was famous for being a waste. The Miao people did not treat Miao Yi as the second miss of Miao tribe, nor were they wary of her. Miao Yi asked around. From the gossip of the Miao people, she got some information. For example, because of Madame Miao's ruthless attack this time, Miao Yuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Miao Yuan was afraid, so he handed his dying sister to Madame Miao. And on the day he handed her over, Miao Yuan died. The cause of death was unknown, but the Miao people knew. Madame Miao hated Miao Yuan so much. How could Miao Yuan survive in her hands? As for Miao Ji, because she handed over her sister, it seemed that she was rewarded by Madame Miao and went to live a good life. Miao Yi could not be sure whether these gossips were true or false, and the only thing she could be sure of was Miao Rongrong had come to her with her fangs and claws bared. Her mother was indeed dead. Indeed, Miao Ji handed her to Madame Miao personally. At that moment, Miao Yi's heart was completely swallowed by darkness. She became a child without a father or mother. She became the lowest person in Miao tribe. Anyone could trample on her pride at will. She promised her mother, before she could confirm that she was the saintess, "Don't show your talent and strength in Gu." She always remembered this advice and paid a real price, no matter how hard the days were. In the eyes of outsiders, she was still a waste to the point that everyone could bully. But in private, Miao Yi never relaxed her absorption of Miao tribe's Gu. She put all her effort into cultivation. She wanted to become the saintess of Miao tribe. Open and aboveboard. Kill Madame Miao, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong. Then find Miao Ji and make her kneel in front of her mother's grave to apologize. To avenge his mother. The memories ended. After Miao Ji told him everything, her face was visibly relieved. It was probably because these words had been suppressed in his heart for far too long. She couldn't bear the pressure anymore. Yi didn't know that you were just acting as the sacred maiden for her for 4 years? After Yi Qing Luo heard all the memories, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. How fate made fools of people. Yes. Miao Ji shook her head. Yi Qing Luo sighed. It was no wonder that Miao Yi would reveal such an expression when she saw Miao Ji. His hatred towards Miao Ji had risen so quickly in that instant. Miao Ji could be considered as her mother's murderer. How much he loved and respected Miao Ji. After seeing Miao Ji become the holy virgin of the Miao tribe, her hatred for Miao Ji deepened. In Miao Yi's heart, she must have thought, Miao Jining became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. It was because he had handed over Miao Yuan that he had this opportunity. It was even more likely that he would feel. The position of saintess that Miao Shuyi had promised was given to her. But in the end, Miao Ji became the saintess. Then Miao Ji must have used some method to snatch the position which originally belonged to her. This misunderstanding. How long more do you plan to squat there and eavesdrop? Yi Qing Luo's words had just landed. Miao Ji's entire body stiffened, as though she understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked towards the direction where Yi Qing Luo's gaze had landed. The wind blew, bringing with it the fragrance of the surrounding grass and leaves that were the food of the gu worms. There was also the rustling sound of countless gu worms squirming. Even after staring for a long time, the figure that Zhang Xian had imagined did not appear before him. Miao Ji's initial nervousness gradually turned into disappointment. Chapter 28-29. Not coming out means that after you know the truth, you're unable to face your aunt? Yi Qing Luo didn't mind Miao Ji's words as she continued looking at that direction. Or is it because, even after knowing the truth, you're still unable to forgive her? Miao Ji's expression froze on her face when she heard what she said. Her face started to turn pale. Her clenched fists clenched even tighter. Yi Qing Luo was so certain. She was certain that Miao Yi was not far away from this guest room, which meant to say that all the memories she mentioned earlier, Miao Yi heard all of it. Miao Yi knew the cause and effect of everything. Was it as what Yi Qing Luo said, unable to face her? Or was it because she was unable to forgive? In this uneasy atmosphere, the atmosphere was very tense. A young lady dressed in the Miao tribe's sacred maiden candidate's attire slowly walked into their sight. The young lady's face was filled with tears. A pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Miao Ji, as though she was confirming something. When Miao Ji's gaze fell onto the young lady's face, she seemed to have turned into a fossil as she froze on the spot. Didn't you want a chance for the both of you to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully? Why are you still in a daze here for? Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Miao Ji as she spoke calmly. These two had been toyed with by fate, and there were too many misunderstandings between them. The matters between them, outsiders couldn't interfere. Only if the both of them were frank and open, saying out what was in their hearts, could it be resolved. Yi Qingluo had no intention to interfere in their grudges. Miaoji's throat moved as her pale lips trembled slightly, but after some time, she couldn't spit out a single word. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell. At this moment, Miaoji's body was trembling slightly. One of them stiffened, not daring to open his mouth to break the silence. The other's face was filled with tears as he watched quietly. This situation lasted for almost half an incense stick of time. Yi Qingluo might as well take action directly as she threw the both of them out. Go go go, don't disturb Xian's rest. Closing the room door, Yi Qingluo returned to the bed and sat down, one hand holding the man's wide palm, as though this was the only way to let him feel that she was by his side. But hadn't even warmed up in time. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Then he felt the world spin around him. Her body had already fallen onto the bed. The man's hot and hard body firmly fixed her delicate body between his arms. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled his nose. The man's long, ink-like hair cascaded down and landed on her face, stirring her skin. Yi Qingluo's pupils constricted through her hair. Her eyes reflected that peerless, noble, and indifferent face. It was Dmo Xian. He woke up. Yi Qingluo's eyes lit up slightly as she revealed a joyful look. Xian, your body. What's wrong with this sovereign? Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes as his thin lips curved upwards. So impatient to fulfill your promise to this lord. Yi Qingluo's pupils shook. In his body, was it still the centrifugal goo that controlled it? Had he become the black-bellied, powerful overlord who had forgotten about her again? Why are you in a daze? Dmo Xian bent down and his thin lips came close to hers as he gave a low hoarse laugh. Racking your brains to get this sovereign into this small room, a lone man and woman. Their entwined hands gradually intertwined with each other's as they gently kissed. At the same time, the atmosphere between the two people who were chased out of the door was completely different and strange. Neither side said a word. It wasn't until the tightly shut door that the young girl let out a cry of surprise, followed by the young girl's coquettish murmur. Miao Yi finally realized something. She raised her hand and wiped the tears off her face. Then, she turned around and walked towards the other side of the courtyard. Chapter 28:31. However, Miao Yi's emotions were unstable. Before Miao Ji could stop her, she had already rushed into the courtyard that was blocked by the vines. Miao Yi's feet had already sensed danger when she had just stepped into the vines. She had an innate sensitivity towards goo worms. She quickly retracted her feet and took out a powder that could restrain goo worms from the brocade bag at her waist to counterattack. Miao Yi's reaction was indeed very fast. However, she was impulsive, and half of her feet had already stepped into the vines. Even if she counterattacked, on the vines, there were several black goo worms that were about the thickness of a finger, and they directly wrapped around Miao Yi's feet. Miao Yi's face was slightly pale, and she quickly sprinkled the powder on her feet. Suddenly, a hand stretched out and stopped her hand that was sprinkling the powder. Then she was brought into a warm embrace. You can't use the anti-goo powder. These are blood-sucking goo worms that move in groups. If you use the anti-goo powder to hurt one of them, thousands of blood-sucking goo worms will take revenge for you. The woman's gentle voice sounded beside her ears. Miao Yi's delicate body suddenly froze. She stood still in a daze. In her mind, a scene from a long time ago actually appeared. At that time, Miao Ji also held the little girl in her arms like this. Miao Ji used her unique gentle tone, patiently and seriously explaining the knowledge of goo worms that she did not understand. This scene. It had been a long time since she had felt it. Ugh! A muffled groan startled Miao Yi back to her senses. Miao Ji used all her strength to protect her in her arms. She directly used her hands to block the blood-sucking goo worms that climbed up for her. A few soft black goo worms instantly attached themselves to Miao Ji's fair arms. Almost in an instant, Miao Ji's hands quickly dried up. Miao Yi's eyes widened, and she cried out in panic, trying to help her get rid of those blood-sucking goo worms. Miao Ji's hands firmly held her in place. Miao Yi curled up in her arms, unable to move at all. "I'm fine." Miao Ji's voice was very soft, and there was a hint of sobbing. "Don't be afraid, it's good that you're fine." As she spoke, the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. She didn't seem to feel that she had been possessed by the blood-sucking goo. Her withered arm used the hand that was holding Miao Yi and pulled Miao Yi behind her. "Stand there and don't move," Miao Ji said softly. When she was sure that Miao Yi was standing in a place that she thought was safe, only then did Miao Ji start to deal with the blood-sucking goo. A moment later, the blood-sucking goo were sealed back into the Poison Goo Institute. Miao Ji's face was extremely pale. She let out a sigh of relief. The feeling of losing too much blood rushed to his head. The dizziness in front of her caused her body to sway. "Be careful." Chapter 28:32. The corners of her lips curled into a reluctant arc as she spoke in a hoarse voice. No matter. It's all right if you don't want to." "Aunt." Suddenly Miao Yi's voice interrupted Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji was stunned as tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. She choked with sobs as her teary eyes looked at Miao Yi without blinking. You're forgiving me. Why did you do that?" Miao Yi pursed her lips tightly as her eyes stared at Miao Ji's obviously withered hand. "Do you think that I will forgive you just like this?" Miao Ji's voice choked as her throat tightened. Miao Yi raised her hand and supported her as they walked towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's room, which was the furthest away from the guest room. As they walked, the girl's icy cold voice was heard. "I call you aunt because you are indeed my aunt. Even if I hate you, this is a fact that cannot be changed." Miao Ji's eyes turned redder as she opened her mouth to explain, but she didn't know how to explain. The two of them remained silent as they entered the room. Miao Yi helped Miao Ji to the seat as she held up her hand and checked it carefully. "Rearing venomous worms in your own courtyard, and you didn't prepare any antidote." "My hand is fine." Miao Ji shook her head as she lowered her eyes to look at her withered hand which was placed on the table. "It'll be fine in a few days." Miao Yi pursed her lips as she didn't say another word. It was another silent atmosphere as it lingered between the two of them. Miao Ji wanted to open her mouth to break the silence several times. But facing Miao Yi's expressionless face, all her courage was extinguished at this moment. Obviously, she wanted to sit together with Miao Yi and clarify all the misunderstandings in the past. Now this opportunity was right in front of her eyes. But she couldn't say a single word. This silence made Miao Ji's heart feel even more uncomfortable. Finally, Miao Ji couldn't take it anymore. Did you hear what I said to Miss Yi?" "Amen." Miao Yi replied calmly. The sacred maiden selection ceremony had ended, and she wanted to be alone for a while. But when she saw Yiqing Luo's Chi-Chi, that furry little ball, it was obviously here to comfort her. She thought about it and decided to look for Yiqing Luo, to tell her about her relationship with Miao Ji. But he had not expected Miao Ji to take the initiative to look for Yiqing Luo. She brought Chi-Chi and followed behind Yiqing Luo and the others, all the way to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. He also heard all of Miao Ji's memories clearly. Then, Miao Ji's voice was hoarse. She paused and asked carefully, "So what do you think?" Miao Yi was silent for a moment. After a while he raised his head. Miao Yi's gaze was calm as she stared at Miao Ji. There was no expression on her face. "Aunt, although you didn't kill Mother with your own hands, it doesn't change the fact that you were an accomplice in her death." Miao Ji's throat tightened again, and she couldn't say anything else. That was right. No matter how righteous her reason for handing Miao Yuan over was, it couldn't change the fact that she had personally sent her sister to hell. "I don't blame you," Miao Yi continued. "But I can't forgive you, and I can't forgive myself." As she said that, her eyelids drooped. "If it wasn't for me, Mother wouldn't have died." Even though she was only 7 years old. But all the memories had long been engraved in her mind. Chapter 28:33. Her mother was seriously injured because she was protecting her. In order to protect her, Her mother begged her aunt to use her own life to exchange for her safety for the next few years. Although her aunt was her helper. But the real culprit was her. She was unable to forgive her aunt. And even more unable to forgive herself. You can't think in this way. Miaoji stuttered as she tried to persuade her. Sister's death is not your fault, it's all my. I sent sister to Madame Miao's hands. You're right not to forgive me. Feeling Miaoji's anxiety and worry, Miao Yi slowly shook her head. She understood Miaoji's meaning. Miaoji didn't wish for her to go against herself because of this matter. She would rather she blame her, rather than let her blame herself. Miao Yi closed her eyes, hiding the sadness in her eyes as she gave a low laugh. Don't worry, mother used her life to exchange for a future. I will not let mother die in vain. As she said that, she slowly raised her eyes, which had regained its calm. I will complete mother's dying wish, to take revenge for mother, to become the Miao tribe's saintess. Miaoji's lips squirmed a few times. Miao Yi had already interrupted her words. Earlier in the house, I heard it too. Is it true that you have a way to detoxify the overlord's poison? Miaoji swallowed the words that were in her mouth. Qing Luo is my benefactor, and the overlord is the person whom Qing Luo cares about the most. If you have a way, before you ascend, can you tell me about it? Miao Yi continued. Miaoji's lips trembled again, and after some time, she spat out a word, all right. Miao Yi looked at her injured hand. After the blood-sucking worm's poison is detoxified, then detoxify the overlord. Seeing that Miao Yi had placed all her thoughts on helping Dmo Xian detoxify the worm, in order to stay in Nirvana realm for the last few days, to get along well with Miao Yi, Miaoji also shifted all her thoughts to the goo poison. What kind of worm was the overlord in? What kind of person could plant a worm on the overlord? Till now, she still didn't know what worm was in the overlord. Centrifugal worm and love worm. Miao Yi said word by word. The target is Qing Luo. Miaoji's expression froze. I thought His Majesty was poisoned by the heart separation spell, but there was also the love spell. How can anyone from the Miao tribe use these two forbidden goo techniques? Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong worked together. Miao Yi didn't explain the situation in detail. These two types of venomous worms are originally mutually restraining, and now both of them are in the overlord's body. Moreover, the target is Qing Luo. Love venomous worm makes the overlord obedient to Qing Luo, whereas venomous worm makes the overlord forget everything about Qing Luo. She paused for a moment. Chapter 28:34. In the other room, the entire room was filled with the scent of spring. The shadow of the bed fluttered as it shimmered. The silver robe and red shirt were intertwined. The young lady's cheeks were flushed red and her half-opened eyes were bewitching. The man on top of her was gently teasing the flame. Yi Qingluo's mind was in a mess, but her consciousness was still awake. She tried to speak several times as her hands pushed against the man's chest. But before she could say a word, everything was sealed by a scorching aura that covered the sky and covered the earth. No, I can't. Between her murmurs, Yi Qingluo panted heavily as she spat out two fragmented words. The man who was still kissing lifted his head. That handsome, godlike face was quietly reflected in her eyes. The man's peach blossom eyes were as calm as water without any ripples. He looked as though he wasn't tainted with the slightest bit of confusion. But if one looked closely, she could tell. In the depths of the man's tranquil eyes, there was a flickering flame. The corners of his lips were filled with a hint of mischievous air. Drops of sweat rolled down from his taut muscles. This was obviously the performance of the cloud power of emotions. No way. Mo Xian opened his mouth with a magnetic and seductive tone. Looks like I haven't worked hard enough? Teasing to such an extent. The young lady was still saying no way? Mo Xian could tell. This was a rejection, not a woman's irony in bed, but a real sense of no way. No way? This was the first woman who rejected him? No. Yi Qingluo tried her best to stay awake as she trembled weakly. She panted heavily, not allowing herself to be bewitched by his beauty. This is the sacred maiden's courtyard. They will be back anytime. No way. This is not an excuse. Dmo Xian supported himself with one hand as the other hand floated onto the young lady's blushing face. His fingertips slowly brushed past her half-open misty eyes. His thin lips curled into a demonic cold arc. Your moans earlier were very enchanting. They are all tactful people. Such a simple sentence made Yi Qingluo's face burn even more. She bit her lips in embarrassment, avoiding Dmo Xian's deliberate teasing. Although the beauty was right in front of her, she also wanted to continue to the last step. But she did not forget. Dmo Xian's current condition could not continue. In Dmo Xian's body, there was still the existence of the centrifugal force goo. If they were just a little more intimate, the centrifugal goo would make Dmo Xian leave her. If he did such a thing, the centrifugal force goo would probably clamor even more fiercely. The last person to suffer was Dmo Xian. Now the room was lit with the tranquilizer incense, which stabilized the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body. But Yi Qingluo wasn't sure if Gongxiang would be able to suppress the corrosion of the centrifugal force goo if this carried on. She could not risk Dmo Xian's health. Xian. Yi Qingluo was thinking about what excuse to use to stop the man who had already gone crazy. However, just as he called out the name, the warmth and scorching heat covering his body abruptly withdrew. The man had already gotten off the bed and was standing by the side. Yi Qingluo was stunned. She wanted to get up, but her whole body was limp without any strength. She could only turn her head to look at Dmo Xian. The man's slender fingers lightly touched her body. His slightly messy robe instantly tidied up. His face regained its usual indifference, and when his eyes looked towards Yi Qingluo, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. Extremely cold. Chapter 28:35. Yi Qingluo's pupils suddenly widened. An ice-cold chill spread through his limbs and spread throughout his body. Her face turned pale. You. What do you mean? Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he squinted his long peach blossom eyes. His handsome face was icy cold. This lord has no interest in sleeping with you. Yi Qingluo's delicate body on the bed trembled slightly. Her 5 fingers clenched the quilt under her tightly. Her eyelashes trembled as she stared fixedly at Dmo Xian's eyes, with some obscure flickering. The man stood by the bed. Tall and slender, dressed neatly. She looked very noble and graceful. She, on the other hand, was lying on the bed with her clothes half taken off. The sharp contrast made Yi Qingluo's face turn paler. Her pink lips tightened, and when she spoke again, her voice sounded bitter. Dmo Xian, you know very well that it's not that I'm unwilling. Dmo Xian sneered without saying a word. The curvature of his lips was like a smile yet not a smile, which was extremely terrifying. That neither yin nor yang look made Yi Qingluo's anger gushed out for no reason. She clearly knew that Dmo Xian was like this because of the centrifugal worm. But, right now, she was obviously concerned about Dmo Xian's health. It was for Dmo Xian's sake that she rejected such intimacy time and time again. On the contrary, he even took advantage of her, and gave her a cold shoulder. She endured Dmo Xian forgetting her. Endured Dmo Xian's indifference. Endured Dmo Xian flirting with her without any feelings. She was full of grievances. Who would understand? Perhaps, she was really a little princess who was spoiled rotten by Dmo Xian. Assassin, after all, couldn't endure the flood of grievances. Her weak body, which was teased by the man, had also recovered its strength. She abruptly sat up on the bed with a sliver of grievance in her eyes. She tugged at her robes tightly as she said through gritted teeth. Do you still want to say that if I don't want to sleep with you, you'll go find another woman who's willing to sleep with you? The young lady's angry words made Dmo Xian's brows suddenly crease tightly. Looking at the young lady's aggrieved face, her pair of charming eyes seemed to be rippling with layers of ripples, as if she was about to cry from grievance. Dmo Xian's heart inexplicably twitched, but very quickly his expression returned to that of desperation. His face didn't reveal any other emotions. He smiled calmly and indifferently, yes. Just one word and Yi Qingluo was about to explode from anger. Was it that interesting to bully her? She lifted her leg and kicked the side of the bed. Go, go, go. Go, I won't stop you. Go now. That leg directly kicked onto Emotien's body. Emotien took 2 steps back from the kick. Then he looked down and stared at the small foot that was still kicking his waist. The owner of that foot was obviously still throwing a tantrum. Chapter 28:36. However, after 6 hours had passed, Yi Qingtang's expression changed. Yi Qingluo's grievance was gradually replaced by worry. After Emotien walked out of the room, Yi Qingluo curled up on the bed alone as she kept on grumbling about Emotien. The more she complained, the more wronged she felt. The more aggrieved she felt, the more Yi Qingluo wanted to let Emotien know that she wasn't really a woman who had to pester him and couldn't leave him. It was time to let Emotien have a taste of being treated coldly. Thinking in this way, Yi Qingluo didn't chase after him or search for him. Miao Ji and Miao Yi knocked on the door. Miao Ji's voice was slightly awkward as she asked cautiously, "Miss Yi, is it convenient for us to come in?" "What's inconvenient about it?" Yi Qingluo climbed down from the bed. Miao Ji and Miao Yi pushed the door and walked in, only to discover that Yi Qingluo was the only one left in the room, and Yi Qingluo's expression was extremely gloomy. Miao Ji looked around and asked, "Where is His Majesty?" "We quarreled and he ran away." Yi Qingluo pursed her lips and replied coldly. "Ran away?" Miao Ji's expression changed. Why would they quarrel? In the Saintess courtyard, every garden was filled with goo worms. The overlord already has goo worms in his body. If he provokes other goo worms, it will be very dangerous. Miao Ji's words made Yi Qingluo's eyes flash slightly as her body instinctively tensed up. "Wait for me here with Yi. I'll go look for a venerable sovereign." Miao Ji made a prompt decision. Yi Qingluo hurriedly followed up, "Me too. In this courtyard, besides me, all of you are in danger." Miao Ji stopped him. "I don't want to have to look for you everywhere before I find sovereign." Yi Qingluo's footsteps halted as her face was filled with a complicated expression. After a while, she lowered her eyes and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Please help me find Xian." Regarding the Miao Gu, she was in a state where she only had a smattering of knowledge, not to mention whether she could protect herself in the face of those goo worms. He couldn't increase Miao Ji's burden. She could only stay here and wait for news. He watched Miao Ji leave. Yi Qingluo sat silently on the seat by the side. She hung her head and clenched her fists. "Weren't you guys fine just now? Why did it suddenly?" Miao Yi was afraid that Yi Qingluo would be overly worried and let her imagination run wild. So after thinking for a moment, she opened her mouth to ask. She and Miao Ji were outside the door and heard Yi Qingluo and Emotien's intimate voices. Could it be an auditory hallucination? Yi Qingluo's fingers tightened even more. Her voice was very hoarse. "In his eyes I can't feel his feelings for me. My heart is very flustered." She raised her head, and her charming eyes were covered with a layer of clear and moist mist. She pursed her lips tightly, as if she was holding back something. "I clearly know that he was poisoned by the heart separation goo. And he was poisoned because of me, but I still feel wronged." She clenched her fists tightly. Tell me, am I very selfish? So selfish that I only want him to treat me well, but I don't want to see him acting like he doesn't care about anything. This is not selfishness." Miao Yi walked up to her, reached out her hand, and gently patted her on the shoulder. "Because you love Dizun, and because you love him, you want his response, don't you?" Chapter 28:37. As Miao Yi said that, she sat down beside Yi Qingluo. He held Yi Qingluo's hand and clasped it in his palm. "Qingluo, my aunt said she has the confidence to find a way to cure the Overlord's dual venomous worm. However, because it was a poison that countered each other, his aunt wanted to find a safer method. After the inheritance of King of Venomous Worms ends tomorrow, I will enter the Saint Pavilion and study it with my aunt." She comforted him in a gentle voice. "So just wait for us for a few days. Before my aunt ascends to the upper realm, we will definitely be able to find a way to cure the venomous venom for the sovereign." Hearing this sentence, Yi Qingluo's gaze had some changes. She raised her eyes and looked at Miao Yi. Can the poison in Xian's body really be completely removed? Yes. Miao Yi nodded with certainty. Although Aunt has only been the Miao tribe's holy maiden for 4 years, she still reads the books in the Holy Maiden Pavilion every day. Ordinary people need 50 years to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden before they can ascend to the upper realm. But I only used a short 4 years to ascend. You should believe in my strength. I believe you. Yi Qingluo's eyes finally lit up. The next morning, Miaoji walked into the room with a tired face. Yi Qingluo hadn't slept the entire night, and when she saw that Miaoji had returned, her gaze went past her, but she didn't see that familiar figure whom she had been pining for. Miaoji sighed softly. I found the overlord. He's fine, but, she paused and didn't finish her sentence. Yi Qingluo's expression turned indifferent. It's just that he doesn't want to see me, right? Miaoji didn't answer, which was a tacit admission. Yi Qingluo sat dejectedly by the side. Her little fists clenched tightly as she angrily smashed it on the wooden table. Haven't you already been inflicted with the centrifugal venom, and turned into that noble and elegant, high and mighty overlord? Still acting like a child throwing a tantrum with me, isn't he childish? Miao Ji and Miao Yi looked at each other. It's fine if I don't want to see you. After he's cured, I'll see how he'll kneel on the washboard and beg for my forgiveness. Yi Qingluo gritted her teeth as she spoke. Although his mouth was stubborn, in actual fact, Yi Qingluo's heart was finally at ease. It was not important whether DMO Xian was willing to come back to see her. The most important thing was to ensure DMO Xian's safety. It could be seen from Miao Ji's expression. DMO Xian should be in a safe place now. I've told the overlord about the dangers in the Saint Lady's courtyard. Miao Ji massaged her aching forehead with her slender fingers and continued. Don't worry too much. The overlord is actually the safest in the Holy Maiden's courtyard. At least, he wouldn't try his best to conceal the fact that DMO Xian was afflicted with a venomous worm. Intends to stay in the Sacred Maiden's courtyard? Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips as she understood the meaning behind Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji put down her hand and glanced sideways at the young girl sitting beside her. I can see that even though His Majesty has been poisoned by the centrifugal parasite, and should have been swallowed by the parasite, he still cares about you and values you. Miao Yi handed a cup of hot tea to Miao Ji and continued. I've read Gu books for many years, but I've never heard of anyone who was poisoned by the heart separation Gu would be like Lord Dizun, paying so much attention and care to the person he should be keeping his heart from. Chapter 28:38. I know he won't leave me behind. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. No matter if I'm in his memories, he won't leave me behind. She was extremely certain of this. Towards the relationship between her and DMO Xian, she had always been incomparably confident. I'm just worried. Yi Qingluo raised her eyes and met Miao Ji's gaze. His feelings for me are too deep, so he will definitely have to contend against the centrifugal worm in his body. I'm afraid he will fail. According to the past, DMO Xian was stimulated by the worm and fell into a coma. He would change the mode immediately after he woke up. But this time, DMO Xian was stimulated by the worm web, but his consciousness was still eroded by the centrifugal worm. This made Yi Qingluo had no choice but to think and worry. DMO Xian loved her. Even his soul loved her. There was no doubt about this. But now apparently, the time for the centrifugal worm to move was getting longer and longer. If this went on for a long time, DMO Xian's consciousness might really be eroded by the centrifugal worm. By then, DMO Xian would really leave her heart. But the love between the two of them. There was a possibility that it would cause DMO Xian to be unable to take action, and then suffer the torture of the worm. What she didn't want the most was to see this happen. Go take part in the King of Venomous Worms inheritance ceremony. After you become the Sacred Maiden, come look for me at the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. Miao Ji put down the teacup in her hands and stood up. I'll go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the books on this. Aunt. Miao Yi frowned. obviously not agreeing to her arrangement. Yi Qingluo also stood up. In order to help me find Xian, you didn't sleep for the whole night. Go rest first. It's all right, my body, I know. Miao Ji's brows were filled with a gentle smile. Her eyes were gentle as she looked at Miao Yi's direction, as though she was overjoyed by Miao Yi's worry for her. The exhaustion in her eyes was also swept away in an instant. Yi Qingluo and Miao Yi followed behind Miao Ji as they walked out of the sacred maiden courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there were several elderly dressed in Miao elders' attire. Standing at the forefront were the first elder and the second elder. When they saw the three of them, they immediately welcomed them with smiles. Saintess Lady Miao, Lady Yi, you're finally out. Miao Ji frowned slightly. Why are you waiting outside the Saintess yard so early? Did something happen? Great Elder Miao looked past Miao Ji and at Miao Yi, who was behind her. Then he retracted his gaze and said, Your Highness, we're about to enter the land of the Gu King to carry out the inheritance ceremony of the Gu King. But the Gu King? Miao Ji understood. These elders must be worried. Chapter 2839. Former clan leader? Former eldest young miss? Miao Yi muttered these two terms softly, as her face revealed a smile which didn't look like a smile. Fifth Elder Miao's face turned pale, as though he was vexed at himself for spilling the beans. But Fifth Elder Miao quickly adjusted his expression, as he continued speaking in a righteous manner. Miao Yi, this elder only wants to know, do you know where the ancient Gu King is? Miao Yi didn't reply, but only looked at him quietly, as she gave a light smile. Yi Qingluo walked up, as she placed one hand on Miao Yi's shoulder, as a similarly treacherous sneer surfaced on her gorgeous face. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong had schemed to frame me and the Overlord, so aren't they already imprisoned in Qinghua Sect's underground prison by Sect Master Yin? No one is allowed to visit them. Her voice was very gentle, with a tinge of a young lady's unique sweetness. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was extremely pleasing to the ears. But every single word that she said was like a bolt of thunder, exploding heavily in the few elders' hearts. They hadn't even had the time to digest this bolt of thunder, the shock and the emptiness in their hearts. What followed was a powerful aura that covered the sky and the earth, pressing down on them. I wonder how did the various elders see Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong? Yi Qingluo's tone suddenly turned gloomy. Fifth Elder Miao instantly felt a chill down his spine, as his forehead started to sweat profusely under this powerful pressure. Second Elder Miao was the first to react, as he immediately gave a dry laugh, trying to break this awkward atmosphere. Miss Yi has misunderstood. What old Five said is, before. Right, that was before. Grand Elder Miao continued. It's not that we believe the previous clan leader's words, but to confirm, in case something goes wrong at such an important occasion later, losing the Miao tribe's face. The two elders laughed dryly, as they tugged Fifth Elder Miao's arm, pulling him back. However, Yi Qingluo and Miao Yi totally didn't follow along with what they said. Instead, a cold smile hung on their lips, as a "do you think the both of us are fools" expression. The smiles on the faces of the elders could no longer be maintained. Great Elder Miao glanced at Miao Ji, who was standing at the side and had not said a word since the beginning. With a gentle smile he said, We're about to head to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. Lady Miao, you should know what this means to the Miao tribe. This time Miao Yi spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth caused the expressions of the elders to darken. She sneered. To be honest, the Miao tribe has no special meaning to me. The reason why I am here and become the candidate for the Holy Maiden is not because I am interested in this position or the Miao tribe, but this is my mother's dying wish. These elders also knew about the grudge from back then. At this moment, their faces were dark and gloomy, and they could not say a word. Miao Yi's rude and arrogant attitude instantly ignited Fifth Elder Miao's emotions. What are you saying? Are you not from the Miao tribe? Don't tell me that the blood flowing in your body is not the blood of the Miao people? Chapter 2840. He sneered incessantly, boiling with hot blood that no one could stop. Ex-eldest Missy is right. People like you do not even have the Meow tribe in your heart. Old 5. What are you doing? Fourth elder Meow quickly grabbed fifth elder Meow. The other elders' faces darkened, but they did not stop him. Obviously, they agreed with fifth elder Meow's words. Meow-E's face gradually turned cold. Fifth elder Meow seemed to be getting more and more excited as he continued to roar. In my opinion, you don't even know the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms. You just want to destroy the Meow tribe in front of all the guests and tribesmen. He roared the last sentence. Fifth elder Meow was finally feeling better. His face was full of disdain and mockery towards Meow-E. His gaze towards Meow-E was also full of hatred. That's enough, old 5. Grand elder Meow, who had been silent for a long time, called out to stop fifth elder Meow. He stopped fifth elder Meow and let out a long sigh. Missy Meow, don't blame old 5. He is straightforward and never considers the consequences of his words. But what he said is not without reason. He paused and looked at Meow-Ji. I know that the Holy Virgin and Missy Meow have a close relationship. Why don't you say something fair? To maintain the dignity of the Meow tribe and stabilize the hearts of the tribesmen. Our request is not too much, right? Meow-Ji had been the Holy Virgin for the past 4 years. She had been working with Grand Elder Meow to maintain the prosperity of the Meow tribe. Back then, it was Grand Elder Meow who firmly believed that Meow-E was a direct descendant under the protection of the King of Venomous Worms, and had been taking good care of her. Over the past 4 years, the two of them could definitely be considered friends. Grand Elder Meow understood Meow-Ji's character. Meow-Ji also understood that everything Grand Elder Meow did was for the betterment of the Meow tribe. If it had been anyone else, Grand Elder Meow's choice was indeed made for the sake of the Meow tribe. It was not too much, but the target of their questioning. She was the niece that she had found after much difficulty. How could she not protect her? In particular, Elder Meow kept using the words of the former young miss to talk about this matter. Was she purposely trying to disgust her E? Meow-Ji did not agree with Great Elder Meow's opinion for the sake of the Meow tribe's reputation, as Great Elder Meow expected. Instead, he sneered and looked straight at Fifth Elder Meow. Is your request not too much? She scoffed lightly. Her eyes were covered with a layer of chilliness. Fifth Elder Meow actually knows that E is from the Meow tribe at this moment, and that the blood of the Meow tribe flows in her body? Why didn't you know about it before this? Fifth Elder Meow opened his mouth to retort. However, Fourth Elder Meow firmly held him down. This was the holy maiden of the Meow tribe. If the fifth brother dared to argue with the saintess, even if Great Elder Meow were to step forward, he would not be able to plead for old Fifth. Meow-Ji sneered as she looked at Fifth Elder Meow's suppressed rage. Her smile became even more sarcastic. As for, why did he appear during the saintess selection ceremony? Don't tell me you don't know the reason? Fifth Elder Meow's face darkened. The other elders lowered their eyes, not daring to look at Meow-Ji's face. When Meow Yixiong was still in power, when Meow Rongrong was still Missy Meow, Meow-E's existence was their humiliation. Meow-E left the Meow tribe because Meow Yixiong and Meow Rongrong forced her to. Now she came back because. However, his laughter was filled with contempt, as if he was challenging Fifth Elder Meow's dignity. Fifth Elder Meow had a tyrannical temper to begin with, so how could he endure Meow-E's mockery? In an instant, Fifth Elder Meow's face and neck turned red. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced towards Meow-E. Fortunately, Fourth Elder Meow understood Fifth Elder Meow's personality. Before Fifth Elder Meow could fly into a rage, Fourth Elder Meow hurriedly held onto Fifth Elder Meow with both hands, preventing him from rushing to his head. Facing Fifth Elder Meow's ferocious face, which was baring his fangs and glaring his eyes, Meow-E could not help but tremble. Meow-E just stood there, as she gave a contemptuous and ridiculing smile. Following that, she raised up one finger and spoke calmly. Since elders have accused me of so many crimes in front of me, then I will answer all of you one question at a time. Miao Yi's elegant voice sounded out calmly. I chose the Miao tribe and chose to participate in the Holy Maiden selection ceremony because of my mother's dying wish. For my mother's sake, I cannot destroy the Miao tribe. After all, no matter how unbearable this place was, it was also the place where her mother and aunt had been saved. It was also the place where she grew up. Of course, Miao Yi wouldn't say these words out loud. Great Elder Miao stared into Miao Yi's eyes for a long time. In the end, he was defeated. His arms drooped down as he clenched his fists tightly. Forget it. Since you're the one who passed the selection's final round, and Sacred Maiden has already acknowledged you, this elder will believe you this time. Star. Chapter 2843. Saying that, Grand Elder Miao bowed towards Miao Ji and led the other elders back to prepare for the ceremony. They had barely taken a few steps. A young lady's chilly voice was heard from behind. Wait a minute. Grand Elder Miao and the others' hearts tightened. Hearing this voice, they felt a surge of coldness. Their feet subconsciously stopped. The young lady's chilly voice rang once again, and this time, there was a hint of a smile. Elders, don't be in a hurry to leave. You've already asked clearly what you wanted to ask, so next it's my turn. His voice made the elders feel as if a heavy weight was pressing down on them once again. Grand Elder Miao was the first to turn his head back as a Methriya Buddha-like smile hung on his face. Time is pressing and we still have many things to prepare. If Miss Yi has anything to ask us, why not we wait for the King of Venomous Worms to acknowledge the inheritance ceremony before we discuss in detail? I've always not had much patience. Yi Qing Luo replied straightforwardly. If I'm impatient, I can't guarantee that I won't get angry in the middle of the ceremony. Her pink lips rose slightly as she smiled lazily. Her tone sounded like a young lady complaining, with a hint of coquettishness. But the few elders could hear the threat in the young lady's words. The expressions of the few elders instantly turned ugly. To be threatened by a young lass. They had lived for more than half of their lives and had always been respected. How could they feel at ease? But because of Yi Qing Luo's status, they didn't dare to show their anger. Hurry and ask what you want to ask. If you delay the King of Venomous Worms' inheritance ceremony, you will bear the consequences alone. Fifth Elder Miao was originally very aggrieved and on seeing Yi Qing Luo's arrogance. How could he bear with his anger? Especially Fifth Elder Miao, who was intentionally brainwashed by someone. He totally disliked Yi Qing Luo. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been released? Yi Qing Luo didn't beat around the bush as she directly looked into the few elders' eyes and asked. Fifth Elder Miao's eyes opened wide. What nonsense are you talking about? Grand Elder Miao's eyes flashed as he immediately stood in front of Fifth Elder Miao, putting on his signature amiable smile. Has Miss Yi misunderstood something? The former chief and the former Miss Yi did such a shameful thing to the Miao tribe. How could they be released? As he spoke, he gave Second Elder Miao a look. He gestured to Second Elder Miao to drag Fifth Elder Miao away. Then he continued with a smile. Old Fifth's words were said by the former First Miss and Old Fifth. Old Fifth had always been on good terms with the former clan leader, so he always remembered these words. That's why there was such a misunderstanding. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao pulled Fifth Elder Miao away. Miao Yi noticed the commotion and frowned. He was about to open his mouth to stop her, but he caught a glimpse of Yi Qing Luo's glare. Miao Yi was stunned and stopped what she was about to say. He could only watch as Fifth Elder Miao was dragged away. Seeing this, Grand Elder Miao breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. The smile on his face became even more amiable. I will find an opportunity to explain the matter regarding the former clan chief and eldest young miss to Old Fifth. Yi Qing Luo only smiled gently, but didn't continue the conversation. Chapter 2844. This time round, Yi Qing Luo didn't stop Grand Elder Miao from leaving. When Grand Elder Miao left, his footsteps were slightly hesitant. After a few steps, he didn't hear the young lady stopping him. Immediately, he hastened his footsteps and left speedily. He was afraid that Yi Qingluo would go back on her words and pester him endlessly. Grand Elder Miao's figure quickly disappeared in front of the three of them. The area outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard instantly quietened down. Miao Yi's brows creased tightly as she looked at Yi Qingluo and asked, "Qingluo, why didn't you let Fifth Elder Miao speak clearly?" Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly as she squinted her eyes with a smile which didn't look like a smile. In the depths of her eyes, there seemed to be a stream of light which kept flickering. This stream of light reflected into Miao Ji's eyes. Miao Ji only felt a chill throughout her body, as though a cold ray had spread from her feet to her entire body. Miao Ji couldn't help but rejoice silently. Luckily her Yi was friends with Yi Qingcheng. If she was an enemy, she was afraid that even she was not Yi Qingluo's opponent. No need to ask, I can tell that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong should have been released. Yi Qingluo's voice was calm without any excess emotions. Before coming here, those few elders should have met Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong. Miao Ji and Miao Yi had the same feeling about this. But they couldn't believe that this was true. Miao Yi's brows creased even tighter. Those two are the Miao tribe's traitors. They have offended the overlord in you, and also offended the Qinghua sect. Those few elders seem to be more selfish, and only want to secure their own elder's position. Why would they take such a huge risk to hide the truth about those two people? To those people, we are after all outsiders. Miao Ji gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been in power for so many years and are completely Miao tribe people. I can confirm that if Miao Rongrong had a chance to make a comeback, they would absolutely not hesitate to kick us aside and help Miao Rongrong up. They can't bear to kick Miao Gu's genius away. Yi Qingluo scoffed lightly. One becomes Sacred Maiden and the other becomes clan leader. It's a happy ending. Miao Yi and Miao Ji looked at each other, their expressions changing. Although the Miao tribe leader was the tribe leader, his power was not as great as that of the Saintess. The Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe was the true leader of the tribe. If Miao Rongrong became the Saintess of the Miao tribe, even if Miao Yi was the chief of the Miao tribe, she would still be suppressed to the point where there was no room for her to breathe. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong sure have a good plan. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. These few elders have apparently been brainwashed by Miao Rongrong and they don't trust you. If I didn't guess wrongly, later when the recognition ceremony starts, your every action will be restricted. It was just as Great Elder Miao had said. They would never allow any accidents to happen. To prevent Miao Rongrong's words from becoming a reality. This was to prevent Miao Yi from thinking of ways to ruin the Miao tribe during the ceremony. They would carefully control everything about Miao Yi. Those two, what are they planning? What are they trying to do? Miao Ji's expression darkened. Miao Rongrong, don't tell me you're planning to fight for the position of Holy Virgin during the ceremony. Chapter 28:45. Miao Ji gritted her teeth. I'll go and watch the inheritance ceremony. I want to see what they're up to. No need. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly, revealing a calm smile. I'm here, rest assured. Miao Ji wanted to refuse. After all, they were in the Miao tribe, and her identity as the Holy Virgin still had some prestige. However, before Miao Ji could reject him, Miao Yi replied, Auntie, you should go rest and rest. Wait for me to go to Holy Maiden Pavilion to find you. Miao Ji swallowed the words that she was about to say. Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong's reputation has been ruined because of what happened to the Qingyu clan. Yi Qingluo smiled as she looked at Miao Ji. Even if those few elders want Miao Rongrong to become the Sacred Maiden, that would depend on whether the Miao clansmen agree to it or not. She paused, her eyes curved into a smile. After all, Miao Rongrong, and her own father, performed a scene of taboo love. No matter how magnanimous the Miao tribesmen are, they will not be able to accept this. Then she tilted her head and said, Moreover, the main reason why Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong ended up like this was because they tried to poison Ah Xian, the great Dizun. Moreover, with my current status and the attitude of the Qinghua sect, is it even possible for Miao Rongrong to become the Holy Maiden? The two of them listened carefully to Yi Qingluo's words. His eyes instantly lit up. Yi Qingluo's words weren't without reason. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's deeds were a disgrace to the Miao tribe. Miao Rongrong really wanted to return to the Miao tribe. It was definitely not that easy. Miao Ji's heart was immediately at ease. Qingluo, I'm curious. Miao Ji recalled Great Elder Miao's reaction. If those two people had really returned from the Qinghua sect, why did Great Elder Miao still dare to ask you to investigate the Qinghua sect? Everyone knew that Yi Qingluo and the leader of the 3,000 Peach Blossoms had a close relationship. All he had to do was ask. The 3,000 Peach Blossoms would soon bring news of the Qinyu sect. The matter of Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong being brought out of Qinghua clan would soon reach Yi Qingluo's ears. But Grand Elder Miao seemed as though he wasn't worried that Yi Qingluo would search for news of Qinyu sect. Yi Qingluo's eyes curled into a smile as her eyes shimmered with an additional sense of ridicule. Even if the 3,000 Peach Blossoms went to investigate, the news they would probably bring back would be Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong are indeed in the underground prison of Qinyu sect. Those two people. Miao Yi's face paled. Yi Qingluo's gaze gradually sunk as it turned gloomy and deep. Those two people in Elation sect should have been swapped out. Swap. Miao Yi and Miao Ji were stunned. Miao Yi clenched her fists in anger. We should have exposed them just now. They want to make it impossible for me to become the saintess in peace, and I will make it impossible for them to conduct the inheritance ceremony in peace. This point you have already done it. Yi Qingluo glanced at her. Miao Rongrong and those elders should be very certain that you don't have the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms on you. So they specially went to the saintess courtyard to force you to hand over the king of venomous worms, so that they could be at ease. You still refused to let him take a look at the king of venomous worms. And adding on to the brainwashing words that Miao Rongrong said to him, he was definitely absent-minded when he conducted the inheritance ceremony, and was in a trance, unable to set his mind at ease. Chapter 2846. Since those elders are unable to completely trust you and have other intentions, then let them carry their last bit of hope and fall into despair. Yi Qingluo's voice was languid with a terrifying charm. Destroy their disloyalty in front of everyone, so that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have no chance to make a comeback. Let them know, in the entire Miao tribe, only you alone is the person that they truly need to be loyal to. As Miao Yi listened, tears welled up in her eyes. Yi Qingluo's schemes, all to pave the way for her future in the Miao tribe? Looking at Miao Yi's reddened eyes, Yi Qingluo raised her hand and rubbed her head. All right, don't be in a hurry to be touched. After everything has settled down, I don't mind if you repay me with your body. Miao Yi's originally touched heart was tickled by Yi Qingluo's words. She burst out laughing. I don't dare to devote my life to you. I'm afraid His Majesty will tear me apart. The atmosphere returned to a relaxed one. When Miao Ji saw this scene, she was relieved. Yi Qingluo was by Miao Yi's side. She did not need to worry that Miao Yi would be humiliated during the ceremony. On the contrary, she should be more worried about those who were seeking their own death and offended Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo was so protective of Miao Yi. What she needed to do now was to repay Yi Qingluo, to find the best way to remove the love worm and the centrifugal worm at the same time. The exhaustion from a sleepless night disappeared in this moment of relaxation, and drowsiness rushed to his head. Miao Ji pressed the corners of her eyes and waved her hand. Go to the land of the king of venomous worms. I'll go back to my room to rest and wait for your good news. The two looked at each other and smiled. The two of them walked side by side toward the land of the king of venomous worms. He had only taken a few steps. Yi Qingluo acutely sensed something. She frowned and turned to look at a certain place in the saintess courtyard. What's wrong? Miao Yi asked. Yi Qingluo's gaze swept the surroundings and didn't detect any other presence before she retracted her gaze. Nothing much, maybe it's my misperception. She felt as if someone had been staring at her. Yi Qingluo didn't take this episode to heart. Pulling Miao Yi along, they quickly disappeared from the saintess domain. Yi Qingluo didn't know Not long after she left, a tall and slender figure walked out from the darkness. That figure was like a god, noble and elegant. The figure was dressed in a flowing purple robe, and his black hair was let loose behind him. That cold and peerless face exuded an icy coldness. Since you want to see her, why do you have to sneak around? Miaoji turned around and looked at the man behind her. The great Dizun is starting to be sneaky. Chapter 2847. Although I'm not sure how much love you and Missy have without the centrifugal worm. Miaoji's smile became gentler. But I'm sure that you absolutely love her. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted as the hands by his side clenched into fists. Miaoji noticed the man's tensed-up emotions. This proved that Dmo Xian had indeed taken her words into his head. She smiled. The reason why I told you about the centrifugal worm is not because I want to use this to build a relationship with the overlord, but... Miaoji paused as her voice became gentler. I don't want to see Missy upset. Difficult? Dmo Xian frowned as he spat out two words in a hoarse voice. Yeah, after all, she loves you. Miaoji nodded seriously. You used to love each other so much. She loved you so much, but you don't remember her. And always used sharp words to poke her heart. How could she not be upset? Miaoji lowered her eyelids. Last night, didn't I tell the overlord that after you left? Missy was alone in the room, very sad, very upset. Moreover, she didn't sleep last night because she was worried about you. Dmo Xian recalled earlier when he saw the obvious greenish-black under Yi Qingluo's eyes. All the muscles in his body tensed up. There was a kind of feeling in his chest. He couldn't describe that feeling. Only his mind was filled with the greenish-black under Yi Qingluo's eyes and the words, "Didn't sleep last night." Overlord, I just want to give you a piece of advice. Miaoji had been paying attention to the changes in Dmo Xian's emotions. Although it wasn't real. But Miaoji noticed it. When he mentioned Yi Qingluo, the atmosphere would always freeze for a moment. It was enough to prove that the current Dmo Xian didn't really have no feelings for Yi Qingluo. If you believe in your heart, believe in your first feeling. Then don't do anything to hurt Miss Yi. Miaoji continued to speak. Otherwise, when the poison in your body is cured, the one who will regret it will be you, Overlord. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened, filled with a deep black. Like a whirlpool, it kept churning in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly again. After that, his figure flashed and disappeared before Miaoji's eyes. An extremely cold aura rose in the air. Miaoji quietly looked at the direction where Dmo Xian had left. He didn't seem to be affected by the cold light at all. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face as he shook his head. Then he sighed softly, turned around, and entered the Saintess courtyard. The hour was drawing near. Miao Yi and Yi Qingluo arrived late. Fourth Elder Miao had been waiting on the path to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. The moment he saw Miao Yi, he rushed forward anxiously. Miss Miao, you're finally here. Boss and the others have been waiting for you for a long time. After the bell rang, it was time for the ceremony to begin. Now there was only the time it took for an incense stick to burn before the bell would ring. However, the King of Venomous Worms that Miao Yi said would appear before the inheritance ceremony started was still nowhere to be found. More than 300 tribesmen of the Miao tribe had gathered outside the land of the King of Venomous Worms. There were also more than 200 guests. Why they were here? Other than witnessing the birth of the Miao tribe saintess. The most important thing was to see how the ancient King of Venomous Worms looked like. The elders were so anxious that they couldn't even stand properly. Star. Chapter 2848. Miao Yi glanced at Fourth Elder Miao indifferently. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong with the inheritance ceremony? No. Everything is ready. Fourth Elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said anxiously. But, Miss Miao, that ancient Gu King, you haven't. Miao Yi raised her eyebrows and said with a smile. Fourth Elder Miao, do you not believe me? No, that's not it. Fourth Elder Miao did not dare to say that he did not believe her. He broke out in a cold sweat and said, "What I mean is that all the preparations are in place and the time is almost up. First, Miss Meow should send the King of Venomous Worms back to the land of the King of Venomous Worms before the guests arrive to prevent others from thinking too much." Meow-ee narrowed her eyes, tilted her head and smiled at the young lady beside her. "Qing Luo, do you think I should listen to him and take out the King of Venomous Worms first?" Meow-ee was very clear. With her status, it was basically impossible for her to avoid the control of the elders. For the Meow tribe's reputation, the 4 elders would definitely join forces to suppress her aura. If he was really suppressed by the 4 elders at the same time, wouldn't that fulfill Meow Rongrong's wish? So Meow-ee decisively hugged onto Yiqing Luo's thigh. As long as Yiqing Luo was around, it didn't matter what tricks those elders wanted to play. They had to consider Yiqing Luo's identity and the power behind her. As expected, just as Meow-ee turned her words towards Yiqing Luo, 4th Elder Meow's face instantly turned pale. He opened his mouth and tried to stop her several times. However, he couldn't think of any reason to stop him. If Yiqing Luo's identity was still Yi Luo, even if he had a slight relationship with the Overlord, they could still muster up the courage to gamble for the future of the Meow tribe. But Yiqing Luo was Yiqing Luo. She was the elder sister of the new leader of the West Continent's 3 Springs sect, the strongest student of the best academy, Heavenly Academy, the little hero who saved the students of various continents and saved the West Continent from the calamity of extinction. In addition, as everyone knew, the Overlord pampered West Continent's Yiqing Luo in the palm of his hand. Even his only mount, the 9-tailed white fox, was at Yiqing Luo's disposal. This was enough to prove Yiqing Luo's status in the Overlord's heart. How would they dare to show any disrespect towards Yiqing Luo? 4th Elder Meow was begging with all his might, hoping that Yiqing Luo would not interfere in the Meow tribe's matters. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and met Meow-ee's line of sight as her pink lips rose slightly. 4th Elder Meow's heart was in his throat. Yiqing Luo chuckled. "Of course you can't hand it over. Can't a silly lady like you tell that my heart isn't on your side at all? If you hand over the King of Venomous Worms, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the Sacred Maiden." Yiqing Luo's reply made 4th Elder Meow's heart tremble. His entire face instantly turned deathly pale. He stood stiffly on the spot with a look of disbelief on his face. They couldn't believe that Yiqing Luo could actually say out their inner thoughts so clearly. They had no intention of leaving any face for their elders. 4th Elder Meow's face sank. He gritted his teeth and frowned. He was infuriated, but he still forced a smile. Miss Yi, what are you saying? Miss Meow is the only direct descendant of the Meow tribe. Of course we will be loyal to Miss Meow." Chapter 2849. Meow-ee put on an obedient look as she nodded. "Then I'll hide the King of Venomous Worms well." Yiqing Luo's face showed that the child was worth teaching as she replied with a warm smile. Hide it well. Don't let those people with ill intentions steal the King of Venomous Worms." 4th Elder Meow, who was standing by the side. When did Meow-ee become so obedient? Yesterday's aura was fully unleashed. Not long ago when they met, she still had a noble and cold attitude. How did she become such an obedient person now? Furthermore, Yiqing Luo's words. Was she treating him as non-existent? Was he purposely mocking their elder for pretending to obey, but secretly opposing in front of him, and harboring evil intentions? 4th Elder Meow was so infuriated that his beard was flying, but on account of Yiqing Luo's face, he could only keep his anger to himself. Unable to ask for the whereabouts of the King of Venomous Worms, the 3 of them were getting closer and closer to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. 4th Elder Meow's heart was getting more and more flustered. This Meow-ee was simply impervious to everything. Plus Yiqing Luo was protecting her by her side. Even if they wanted to follow the original plan, to control Meow-ee with the 4 of them, it was impossible. The nearer they got to the land of the King of Venomous Worms, the more anxious 4th Elder Meow was. Looking at the 2 young ladies in front, chatting happily, his heart was getting more and more anxious. How could the two people in front not feel fourth elder Meow's impatience, as well as his increasingly anxious mood? They only acted as though they knew nothing, like the few disloyal people in the Meow tribe. The more they behaved calmly and freely, the more they scratched their hearts and liver, not knowing. Would the Meow father and daughter pair hiding in the dark be anxious? Very quickly this question was answered. Right at the land of the king of venomous worms, at the entrance of the rear mountain, an old man dressed in a white robe walked over in quick steps. Apparently, this old man had been waiting at the entrance of the rear mountain right from the start, just to block Meow. Eldest young Miss Meow, hurry, there's only less than half an incense's time left. You have to hurry and prepare to start the king of venomous worms' inheritance ceremony. The person who came was the slightly plump and amiable-looking Great Elder Meow. He had an anxious and friendly smile on his face. The moment they met, he wasn't asking about the Goo King, but he was worried that he had missed the best time to inherit. Big brother. Fourth Elder Meow clenched his fists and immediately rushed towards Great Elder Meow. Grand Elder Meow glanced at him but did not say anything. Then he looked at Meow, who was standing motionless at the side, and called out, "Young Lady Meow." Great Elder Meow's attitude has changed so quickly. I can't quite get used to it. A languid voice came from the young lady beside Meow. Yi Qing Luo leaned lazily on Meow's shoulder as she squinted her eyes. Not long ago, didn't Grand Elder Meow put on a questioning expression, wanting Yi to hand over the Goo King first? What's wrong? There's less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn left. Great Elder Meow isn't going to ask anymore? He was just that straightforward. It was so straightforward that it made those elders of the Meow tribe who had other thoughts to feel suffocated. Great Elder Meow was indeed Great Elder Meow. After hearing Yi Qing Luo's ridicule, there wasn't any change on his expression. He only looked at Meow with some guilt as he smiled. Since this elder said that I believe eldest young Miss Meow, then I really believe her. Chapter 2850. She had to admit that Grand Elder Meow's words weren't wrong at all. If it was someone who didn't know the truth, they might really believe Grand Elder Meow. Meow's eyelashes fluttered as she slowly raised her eyes and met Grand Elder Meow's eyes. Grand Elder Meow. You really believe in me? Grand Elder Meow's gaze was calm as he gave a calm smile. Of course. After the ceremony, you will be the Meow tribe's sacred maiden. This elder's heart is naturally on your side. Meow revealed a smile on her face, but beneath her eyes surfaced a sliver of undetectable ridicule. Her tone was appropriately touched. With Grand Elder Meow's words, I feel assured. Grand Elder Meow still wanted to say something. Fifth Elder Meow's urging voice was heard from behind. Boss, time is almost up. If you have anything to say it on the way. Right, there's not much time left. Grand Elder Meow's face was filled with an amiable smile. Eldest young Miss Meow, please. He stretched out his hand as he gestured for Meow to leave first. The entrance to the rear mountain of the land of the King of Venomous Worms was a tunnel that led directly to the King of Venomous Worms' nurturing grounds. Entering from the rear mountain entrance, they just needed to make a few turns, and they would reach their destination. Meow held Yi Qing Luo's hand and was just about to leave when she was stopped by Grand Elder Meow. Miss Yi, please hold on. Meow's petite body stiffened as her eyes flashed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes revealed a, as expected, deep meaning as her lips curled slightly as she smiled at Grand Elder Meow. This is the Meow tribe's secret grounds. Although Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Meow have a close relationship, but ultimately you're not a Meow tribe member, so? Grand Elder Meow explained in a warm voice. Saying that, he intentionally paused for a moment. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly. Oh, I can't enter? This tunnel can only be entered by Meow tribe's sacred maiden, Meow tribe leader, Elder Meow tribe, and the last sacred maiden candidate. Grand Elder Meow revealed a difficult expression. If Miss Yi doesn't believe me, you can ask the Meow tribe members. This has been the Meow tribe's rule for hundreds of years. I didn't say I don't believe you. Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. Since it's the Meow tribe's rules, it's not good for me to request the elder to break the Meow tribe's rules for me, so I should abide by it. Just as she finished this sentence, Yiqing Luo could obviously sense that fifth elder Miao's eyes, which was filled with anxiousness, revealed an unconcealable complacency. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed past a gloomy glint as the smile on her lips grew wider. But I have a few words which I wish to speak to Yi alone. Great Elder Miao thought that Yiqing Luo was reminding Miao Yi to be careful, and not to trust them too much. But when he thought about the plan they had arranged, it was flawless. He didn't take it to heart. Time is pressing. If Miss Yi has anything to say, please say it quickly. With that, Great Elder Miao and the other elders took the lead and entered the tunnel. However, after entering the tunnel, their gazes were fixed unblinkingly on the two people who were whispering to each other. They were extremely vigilant. He had witnessed Yiqing Luo's treachery. They could not allow any accidents to happen. However, what they were worried about did not happen. Yiqing Luo only said something to Miao Yi. Following that, she hugged Miao Yi, as though she was cheering for her. After that, she turned around and walked towards the direction of the guest passageway. Grand Elder Miao heaved a sigh of relief. Looked like he had overestimated Yiqing Luo. After all, she was just a 15-year-old young lady. Her experience of mingling in the world was still too tender. Seeing Miao Yi walking towards the tunnel. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.